17-year-old Dylan Carter was 6 hours into his overnight shift at Carter's Auto Repair when a woman in tears pulled into the service bay at 3:17 a.m. with a car that wouldn't start and desperation in her voice as she explained that she was late for the most important meeting of my life. Dylan had no idea that the blonde woman in dark clothing was Taylor Swift rushing to an emergency record label meeting that would determine whether her surprise album release could happen, or that his decision to work through the night using his own money for parts would save not just her career crisis, but transform his family's struggling auto shop into something beyond their wildest dreams. Before we dive into Dylan's late-night repair job that would change everything he thought he knew about hard work and opportunity, I need to ask you something. If stories about teenagers who inherited their family's struggles and the incredible things that can happen when we choose service over profit matter to you, please hit that subscribe button right now. These stories take weeks to research and verify, and your subscription helps us continue sharing the moments that remind us all that sometimes our biggest breaks come disguised as other people's emergencies. Now, back to Dylan's unforgettable night. Dylan Carter had been working at his family's auto repair shop since he was 14, learning everything about car mechanics from his father Robert, who had built Carter's Auto Repair from nothing over 20 years ago. But the past 2 years had been devastating for the family business. The economic downturn had driven customers to cheaper chain repair shops. A major factory closure in their small town outside Nashville had eliminated many of their regular clients, and Robert's recent heart attack had left him unable to work full-time, forcing Dylan to carry more responsibility than any teenager should have to handle. The overnight shift at the shop was Dylan's idea, staying open 24/7 for emergency repairs and roadside assistance, trying to capture business that other shops couldn't provide. But most nights, Dylan found himself alone in the shop, catching up on repairs from the day shift, ordering parts and managing the books, while hoping that someone would need emergency automotive help that could bring in enough revenue to keep the business afloat. The family was 3 months behind on their commercial lease, 2 months behind on equipment payments, and facing the real possibility that Carter's Auto Repair, Robert's life's work, and Dylan's inheritance would have to close permanently. Dylan was working 16-hour days between school and the shop, but even with his mother Maria taking a second job and cutting every possible expense, they weren't generating enough income to cover their basic operating costs. On this particular Tuesday night, Dylan had been working on a transmission rebuild for a regular customer when he heard a car pull into the service bay with an engine that was clearly struggling. Through the bay windows, he could see a woman getting out of a silver sedan that was making the unmistakable sounds of a dead alternator combined with possible battery failure. Dylan walked out to meet the customer, wiping his hands on a shop rag and preparing to deliver what would probably be disappointing news about repair costs and time requirements. The woman who approached him was wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, with blonde hair partially hidden under a baseball cap. Even in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the service bay, Dylan could see that she had been crying and appeared to be in a state of extreme stress. "Hi," she said, her voice shaky with emotion. "My car just died about 2 miles down the road. I managed to coast here, but it won't start at all now. I'm supposed to be somewhere really important in about an hour, and I don't know what to do." Dylan looked at the sedan and could immediately hear the problem. The alternator was definitely dead, which meant the battery was drained, and depending on how long she had been driving with a failing alternator, there could be additional electrical damage that would require more extensive repairs. "Let me take a look," Dylan said, grabbing his diagnostic equipment. "Can you pop the hood for me?" As Dylan examined the engine, the woman paced nervously beside the car, checking her phone repeatedly, and occasionally wiping tears from her eyes. "How bad is it?" she asked after Dylan had spent several minutes checking various components. "Well, your alternator is completely shot," Dylan explained, "which means your battery's dead too. The good news is that it's fixable. The bad news is that I don't have the right alternator in stock for your car model, and even if I did, this would normally be about a 4-hour job." The woman's face fell. 4 hours? I can't wait 4 hours. This meeting, if I don't make this meeting, everything I've been working toward for the past year could fall apart. Dylan looked at the woman's genuine distress and found himself making a decision that went against every business principle his father had taught him, but felt like the right thing to do for someone who was clearly in crisis. "What if I told you I could have your car running in 90 minutes?" Dylan said. It would mean me driving to the 24-hour parts store, buying an alternator with my own money, and working straight through without breaks. But I think I can make it happen." The woman stared at Dylan in disbelief. "You would do that? Drive to get parts in the middle of the night and use your own money?" "You said this meeting was important," Dylan replied. "If it's that important to you, then it's important enough for me to try to help." "How much would that cost?" the woman asked, reaching for her purse. Dylan did some quick calculations in his head. The alternator would cost about $200, plus a new battery for another $100, plus labor. Normally, the shop would charge around $450 for this type of emergency service. "Let's say $400 total," Dylan said, "and you don't have to pay anything until I get your car running." The woman looked at Dylan with an expression that seemed to combine gratitude, amazement, and something else that Dylan couldn't quite identify. "What's your name?" she asked. "Dylan Carter. My family owns this shop." "Dylan, She paused, seeming to consider whether to say something more, then continued. "I'm Taylor. And if you can really get my car running in time for this meeting, I will never forget this kindness." For the next hour and 20 minutes, Dylan worked with the kind of focused intensity that comes from knowing someone is counting on you. He drove 15 miles to the only 24-hour parts store in the area, bought the alternator and battery with money from his own savings account, and then worked methodically but quickly to replace both components while Taylor waited in the customer area, making phone calls and checking the time obsessively. "This meeting must be really important," Dylan commented as he finished installing the new alternator. "It could change my entire life," Taylor replied. "I've been working on something for months, and tonight is the only chance I have to make it happen. If I miss this meeting, the opportunity disappears forever." Dylan understood that kind of pressure. Every day he worked at the shop, he was fighting to keep his family's business alive and preserve his father's legacy. The idea of missing a crucial opportunity because of mechanical failure was something he could relate to completely. When Dylan turned the key and the engine started immediately, purring smoothly with the new electrical components, Taylor actually started crying again. But this time, the tears seemed to be relief rather than despair. "Dylan, you just saved my life," she said, hugging him impulsively. "How much do I owe you?" $400, like I said," Dylan replied, though he knew he was actually losing money on the parts and labor, especially considering the emergency nature of the service. Taylor reached into her purse and pulled out her credit card, but when Dylan ran it through the shop's payment system, it came back declined. "I'm sorry," Taylor said, looking embarrassed. "I've been having some banking issues related to work stuff. Can I pay you back tomorrow?" "I can give you cash as soon as the bank's open." Dylan looked at Taylor, a woman who had clearly been in genuine crisis, who seemed relieved and grateful for his help, and who was asking him to trust her for payment on a $400 repair bill. "Don't worry about it," Dylan said. "Pay me when you can. Just get to your important meeting." Taylor stared at Dylan in amazement. "You're going to let me leave without paying? You don't even know my last name." "You needed help, and I was able to help," Dylan said simply. "That's what we do here. Take care of yourself and drive safely." Taylor hugged Dylan again, and this time she held on for a moment longer. "Dylan Carter, you are an extraordinary person," she said. "I promise you won't regret trusting me." After Taylor left, Dylan finished his overnight shift and went home to grab a few hours of sleep before school. Thinking about the $400 he was now owed by a stranger and hoping she would actually return with payment. He had used his own money for the parts, and while he felt good about helping someone in crisis, he couldn't afford to absorb the loss if Taylor disappeared. 3 days later, Dylan was working in the shop after school when a convoy of black SUVs pulled into the parking lot. Dylan watched in confusion as several official-looking people in suits got out of the vehicles, followed by Taylor, who was now dressed professionally and accompanied by what appeared to be a management team. "Dylan," Taylor called out, approaching the shop with a huge smile. "I told you I would come back to pay you." As Taylor got closer, Dylan realized that she looked familiar in a way that had nothing to do with their previous meeting. With professional styling, makeup, and confidence, She looked like someone he had seen before, but he couldn't place where. "I brought your $400, Taylor said, handing Dylan an envelope, "plus a little extra for the emergency service and for trusting me." Dylan opened the envelope and found $2,000 in cash. "This is way too much," Dylan said, trying to hand most of the money back. "You only owed me $400. "Dylan, I need to tell you something," Taylor said. "I'm Taylor Swift." Dylan looked at her blankly for a moment, then started laughing. "Right, and I'm the president." One of the men in suits pulled out his phone and showed Dylan Taylor Swift's verified social media accounts, with photos that clearly matched the woman standing in front of him. Dylan's laughter died as he realized they were serious. "You're actually Taylor Swift," he said slowly. "I fixed Taylor Swift's car at 3 in the morning. And you trusted Taylor Swift with a $400 repair bill without knowing who I was," Taylor replied. "Dylan, that meeting I was rushing to? It was an emergency session with my record label about releasing a surprise album. If I had missed it, we would have lost the only window we had to coordinate with radio stations, streaming platforms, and retail outlets. Because you got me there on time, we were able to launch the album, and it debuted at #1. Dylan sat down heavily on a nearby tool chest, processing the information that he had unknowingly played a role in a major music industry event. "But more importantly," Taylor continued, "you showed me the kind of character that I want to support and celebrate. Dylan, I want to buy this auto shop." "What?" Dylan said. Sure, he had misheard. "I want to buy Carter's Auto Repair," Taylor said. "I want to pay off all your debts, update all your equipment, expand your facilities, and make you the head mechanic of the most advanced auto repair shop in Nashville. And I want to send you to automotive engineering school so you can learn everything about modern car technology." Dylan stared at Taylor, trying to process the magnitude of what she was offering. "Why would you do all that?" Dylan asked. "Because you put service above profit, character above convenience, and trust above security," Taylor replied. "You worked all night with your own money to help a stranger in crisis, and then you let that stranger leave without payment because you believed in their integrity. That's the kind of person who deserves to have their dreams supported." The transformation of Carter's Auto Repair began immediately. Taylor's team arranged for the shop to be completely renovated with state-of-the-art equipment, expanded to include additional service bays, and rebranded as Carter's Advanced Automotive, specializing in both classic car restoration and cutting-edge electric vehicle service. Dylan was enrolled in a prestigious automotive engineering program with full tuition covered by a scholarship fund that Taylor established. But he continued working at the shop, now as the head mechanic overseeing a team of technicians and learning to manage the business side of operations. Robert Carter, who had been facing the loss of his life's work, found himself presiding over the most successful auto repair business in the region, with a waiting list of customers and a reputation for excellence that extended throughout Nashville's music industry. "That night taught me something important," Dylan would say when sharing his story. "It taught me that the most important repairs aren't always the ones we do to cars. Sometimes they're the repairs we do to people's faith in humanity by choosing kindness when we could choose self-protection." Taylor often brought her own vehicles to Carter's Advanced Automotive for service, but more importantly, she continued to share Dylan's story as an example of the kind of character that can transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. "Dylan reminds me why I do what I do," Taylor said in interviews about their relationship. "He proved that integrity isn't about the size of the gesture, it's about choosing to help when someone needs help, even when it costs you something and you don't know if you'll get anything back. That's the kind of person who deserves to have their dreams come true." The 3:17 a.m. repair that had started as an emergency service call became a defining moment for everyone involved, proving that sometimes our greatest opportunities come disguised as other people's crises, and that the willingness to serve others without calculating the benefit can create transformations that exceed anything we could have planned or imagined. Sometimes the most life-changing opportunities come disguised as other people's emergencies, and our willingness to serve without calculating the benefit can create transformations that exceed anything we could have imagined. Dylan Carter's decision to work through the night with his own money to help a stranger in crisis proved that true character is revealed not in planned moments of generosity, but in spontaneous choices to put service above self-protection. His decision to trust Taylor with payment demonstrated that integrity creates trust, and trust creates connections that can transform entire families and communities. The most beautiful thing about that night wasn't the financial reward or business transformation, but the reminder that when we choose to help others during their desperate moments, we create ripple effects of hope and opportunity that extend far beyond the immediate crisis and prove that character is the foundation upon which all lasting success is built.